1 hour from now. The superstar has a press conference as Caroline Leavitt will go to her at that time. But we are joined by Jim Pfaff, a friend of the show, president of the Conservative Caucus. And Jim, with your expertise on Capitol Hill, we're in the middle of the Schumer shutdown. Where do we go from here? Do you think the Senate will finally address this and get over that filibuster threshold this afternoon?
Well, the only way for that to happen is for Democrats to break, of course, because we have the cloture rule, that requires a 60-vote threshold to get bills moving through the Senate. That vote failed 55-45 last night, and you're going to have to get 5 Democrats to come on board. I know that John Thune was talking about the fact that they've had discussions with Democrats who might be a little concerned with the situation, so who knows what can break, but I don't see it happening anytime soon. This could be a couple weeks or more before this gets resolved.
And where do you think they stand here in regards to, they want roughly $1.5 trillion for illegal aliens for health care. This is one of the cleanest CRs I've ever seen. Usually government really tries to add in as much of those pet projects and the pork barrel spending, as the late Senator John McCain used to talk about, spending like drunken sailors. We just had a congressional candidate on from Iowa using that very term. Why are these Democrats so upset with what seems to be a good thing, keeping the government open for an additional 7 weeks? And in turn, they only seem to want to keep it open when their team, their squad, is in the White House.
Well, they've been used to Republicans folding consistently whenever we come to these battles. You know, I was working on Capitol Hill in 2013 when that, I think, 19-day or multiple-day close down happened. I wasn't there in 2019. But in every one of these pinch points when they come across, Republicans have been the ones that have folded. And they're not folding this time. There are 2 interesting things that have happened that are, to me, kind of amazing. The first one is what you've talked about, actually having a clean CR or something very, very close to that. That, you know, Republicans have been willing to tack things on and move forward, even with Democrat demands right in front of them. And of course, these were in the days of John Boehner and Paul Ryan, who were just 2 horrible speakers of the House. They really caved in constantly, and their constituency under them caved in the House and Senate, and Mitch McConnell as well too. But that's one difference that is heartening. The other thing that was actually very strong, in my opinion, is something I've been talking about for years. I wish they would do at these times, which is the House passed this clean CR, relatively clean CR, and then they walked away. They left and didn't come back and left it to the Senate to figure out. Now, that has not harmed Republicans in the Senate at this stage. It's harmed Democrats. I mean, Chuck Schumer is looking horrible, and Democrats in general, in the minds of Americans right now, because there was a real opportunity, a clear distinction. The reason Republicans are holding together so strongly, in my opinion, is Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump is willing to have this fight with them and say we can't be playing around with stuff. And there's something else happening that might be very good in terms of procedure, and maybe not in terms of the spending that's taking place. The reason that they're looking to do this CR is because Republicans, for the first time since 1998, are seriously working to pass all 12 appropriations bills. And I won't try to go through all the details of what those bills are, but what it is the 12 areas of government spending that back in the Budget Control Act of 1974, they set up as a way to try to move appropriations more cleanly through Congress. It's been since 1998 that all 12 of those bills have been passed. We have been operating under continuing resolutions since that time. And it's a horrible way to do legislation. But in this case, there might be a chance to break at least that procedural problem moving forward. The bad news is that those 12 appropriations bills probably aren't going to cut spending back to where I'd like it to go, or where Republicans should demand that it goes. But that's the situation we've been in, and it's honestly been 4 people writing the bills in conjunction with the lobbyists since 1998. The Speaker of the House and then the minority leader in the House, and the majority and minority leaders in the Senate. That's literally the way we've been writing spending. And lo and behold, $37 trillion later, after we should have had the debt paid off in 2013, that was the projection in 2000, here we are. But it is a positive move relative to where we've been thus far. And Donald Trump's taking all the right steps, including what may be happening next while the government is shut down.
Very interesting to see all of this taking place. I can remember my former congressman from the 6th District of Illinois, Peter Roskam, someone I have a deep amount of respect for. But going back to constituents, to your point, Jim, saying that I had to vote for the Obama omnibus bill to give trillions and trillions more to the executive branch to spend willy-nilly, because House leadership, they ran the show. So it would go both ways. And I can remember even in fables like The American President, that extraordinary film written by Aaron Sorkin, specifically with the gun bill that took place in 1994, even prior to this 1998 CR practice, that you had staff on the phone screaming at people in the same party saying, come on to this bill. So you actually got an opportunity to see through film how the bacon is made, as they say. Now, what do you think about this week with President Trump? Because breaking news and historical prowess for peace potentially between America, Israel, proposing this to Hamas. Do you think that they will agree to something like this? Because it was really an extraordinary proposal when you read it.
Well, if it's ever going to happen, it's this current arrangement. And at present, as far as I understand, Hamas is the only holdout. You have got, for the first time that I can think of, a significant effort on the Arab states in the region, except for Iran, obviously, trying to press Hamas to buy into this deal. Now, previous peace deals in the region related to Israel have had some participation from the Arab states around, but in the era of the Abraham Accords, it is really remarkable and significant that the Arab states not only are participating strongly in this process, but are providing significant support in the construct of this, which goes against what the tendency has been in the region, where you would have the Arab states ganging up on Israel to try to push them off into a corner that they couldn't easily get themselves out of. That has changed. There is a new way of thinking. Donald Trump is the main reason for that. And in fact, if this deal comes through, it's the eighth argument for him to get the Nobel Peace Prize, and deservedly so. So do I think it will happen? I don't know. I mean, I think Hamas is going to be intransigent, but the two main factors are, one, what I've already talked about, the Arab states' participation. They're pushing Hamas hard to take this. But the second factor is that Hamas's leadership has been decimated over the recent months because of what's going on in Gaza and other efforts related to the Gaza war. And they're not as strong as they used to be from a leadership perspective to stand firm. So hopefully this will come through. If it does, and if it does under the construct that's been put together and that regime holds, it could bring an amazing amount of peace to the region and possibly let Gaza go on that path that Donald Trump's been talking about, where it could really build great wealth and great opportunity. Hamas could have done that after the 2006 agreement that gave them the ability to rule in Gaza, and all they did was squander it so that they can continue off this evil, murderous plan to try to destroy Israel.
And it's roughly coming up to the 2-year anniversary of that October 7th. And I'm amazed, even I see the keyboard warriors online blaming Israel for all of this. And it's really quite sad, because has Israel hit back hard? Absolutely, considering the history. But you can date back, am I wrong in saying, from 1948, since the inception of the state of Israel post-World War II, really a creation out of the United Nations and of Great Britain, with that idea to put the Jewish people in their native land, because they are really the true Palestinians who were first there. We've seen time and again 5 major different peace accords prior to that of even Jimmy Carter and the peace accords at Camp David between Israel and Egypt. These folks, it's literally the size of the scale of New Jersey, surrounded by traditional enemies, but we've really seen a change in that ever since the Abraham Accords.
Yeah, the reason we call it Palestine is because after the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70, the Jews were either murdered or kicked out of the land, and it was called Judea up to that point, and they renamed it Palestine, and that name has stuck roughly ever since, at least as a regional designation. Listen, no, I'm not reflexively pro-Israel in the sense that they can do no wrong. I don't think they can do no wrong. And I don't even necessarily believe that everything that's happened with the Gaza war I agree with. But I will tell you this. After October 7th, they absolutely had a moral and even in terms of international law, an institutional responsibility to push back on what happened that day. On a relative basis, for them in Israel, that was a worse murder spree than what happened to us on 9/11, as tragic and horrible as that situation was. They had every right to push back on that. And in 2006, Israel made a deal to allow Gaza to be self-governed. And ever since that time, during that entire period since then, you've had rockets lobbed over from Gaza. They destroyed what was actually a decent economic base, even under the horrible and frankly, what I want to say, not quite evil, but certainly immoral administration of Israel over Gaza prior to 2006. They had a chance to really explode in prosperity and opportunity that they squandered. And all they did was cause more harm to Israel, throwing rockets regularly across their border into Israel. And then October 7th comes. I mean, what does anyone expect a nation to do? Just to sit back and take no action at all? So again, I think that you can make some criticisms maybe about how the Gaza war has been undertaken, but you can also provide a whole lot of praise too. And you certainly can make no rational argument that Israel had no right to do something like this. So if we can come out of that horrible 2-year war and get an agreement on the basis that Donald Trump has helped put together, it would be a radically wonderful change to the status quo that we have been under. And you have the Arab states willing to help out with this. They're working with Israel to the extent they are through the Abraham Accords. It's almost like all the pieces of the puzzle have come together, at least as we can lay them out on paper. If it can play out the right way, then Israel can really thrive. And one last point, Israel is the archaeological, the historical home of the Jewish people. All the archaeology in the area confirms against what a lot of people say, that no, it's really the Palestinian area. That is the most alarming false idea that there ever was. The archaeology makes it clear of the Jewish foundations in the state of Israel, in the land of the state of Israel. And they have every right to want to affirm that. And in my opinion, generally as a country, I think that they've done that quite well since 1948, and there's no reason that it should change. So in that sense, I completely stand with Israel.
Yes, hard-hitting analysis by Jim Pfaff. I like that because I like that you bring up the fact as well. You don't necessarily agree with everything that the government does, but that doesn't make someone automatically an anti-Semite. And that's, I think, the brilliance of President Trump's approach to everything. Dialogue with friends, dialogue with foes. That's why he solved or helped to solve 7 wars. And now with number 8 and potentially, God willing, number 9 on the horizon with Russia and Ukraine, I think it's very clear that he should at least be considered for the Nobel Peace Prize. And we know from Prime Minister Netanyahu and Congresswoman Tenney, Congressman Carter, to the governments of Pakistan, all endorsing that and writing to include their names officially to recommend him for that award. Prime Minister Modi also sharing on Truth Social that he is in agreement with this peace deal that has been come up by American and Israeli diplomats, including the president and the prime minister. How will, in turn, that will affect perhaps global trade? Because we've seen President Trump use tariffs in many regards to level the playing field, and even this week as well with HHS, Doctors McCary, and also Mehmet Oz, and partnering with Pfizer, trying to bring down the cost of medicine and a revamping, a relooking at healthcare in general with what Secretary Kennedy is doing at HHS.
Well, first of all, I'm very glad for the progress that's been made in that, because this has been, as many things that Donald Trump is seeking to fix, we have had an upside down order economically in so many areas. I mean, he is rejiggering the whole scope of world trade, where the United States, listen, I'm not a fan of tariffs when you just think about it, minus all the intervening situations that we see. But the order we have been under economically around the world has been that other countries have free trade with us, and we haven't had free trade with most other countries. And he is reordering that structure in a way that is going to be very positive. I'm unabashedly libertarian Austrian economics in my model of economic theory. And that theory can and does in many ways speak against a tariff regime, and you want to open up trade between countries. That's the goal that I have. And those who subscribe, many who subscribe to that same economic philosophy are up in arms about what Donald Trump has been doing with tariffs. But I'm just the opposite. I've been arguing for years that we need to restructure this order. Everything that happens internationally, I mean, you want to know how strong a nation we are? We have continued to grow as a nation overall over the last 50, 60 years in a phenomenal way, with huge tariff trade wins against us if we wanted to expand into other markets. And we were still able to compete in many ways in markets. This puts the competition back in line, and it's going to help not just us, but it is going to help other countries too. So I'm hopeful that that as we redo what's happening with the pharmaceutical industry and the way that they've been overpricing us, one of the great examples of the trade regime being turned on its head against us, that can help reorder things worldwide. Companies should not get special benefits from government, and in terms of what we try to do in international trade, they shouldn't get special benefits from certain countries or be able to particularly, kind of jack up prices because of what that international order is. So this is going to be a real help, and the pharmaceutical industry is going to have to step up to the plate and do the right thing. By the way, I have great misgivings of doing this with Pfizer because I think they've been one of the worst actors internationally, in what they've done, and definitely with what they were able to obtain through COVID, which was billions of dollars on a vaccine that I think only had limited efficacy and was only necessary for a certain group of people, mainly older people and people with secondary health issues that needed to be protected. But that said, this is the right approach to take. I hope it works well. Glad to see my hometown pharmaceutical company, Eli Lilly, involved with this too. I grew up in Indianapolis, and they're a big actor there, a big player there. But this is really something that is a very bold and frankly risky move by Donald Trump, which I think is going to help things get back in line in one of the industries that has been the worst industries in terms of the massaging of research through regulatory capture. The pharmaceutical industry has owned the FDA and the other regulatory agencies because and it has made trade worse because small companies that want to come in, they have the hurdle of the FDA to even get started. And so hopefully we can change some of that regulatory structure as well. But if we can get the pricing in line and we can get opportunities for other companies to come in and come up with new ideas, that would be a universally wonderful thing to take place. And I think this is a good first step for that.
Favored nation status and the right to try. I think it's common sense in what can be a very long line, a system that has really, I think, struggled since the institution of Obamacare just some years ago. Jim Pfaff, president of the Conservative Caucus, always a joy to have you on, sir. Thank you for your hard-hitting analysis on the Hill and with other issues affecting the federal city.
Thanks for that. Quick shout out to my former boss, Tim Huelskamp, congressman from Kansas, who's the guy who really championed right to try. And without his effort, that wouldn't have happened. It's one of the great innovations. But thanks for your time. Good to be with you.
Oh, likewise. Absolutely. Thank you for that. And